Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to the show. First, I want to give you an offer that I am posting nowhere else. I have sort of gathered all of the nutrition resources from everything I've ever made, which is a lot between the gym and my own nutrition work and everything that I've done with 23-hour health. There's a shit ton of these like cheat sheet, grocery list, sample meal plan type things. And I put them all on Patreon. So that link will be in the description of the episode. There is a special offer for just you guys. There is only a few of them available. You will see it. It's very obvious. It's the first pricing tier. Do not pay for the more expensive one. I repeat, do not pay for the more expensive one. There's a cheaper one. Do that one. So today we're talking about strength. We're going to go into what that means. I want to welcome Robert to the show. Hello, Rob.
Hello.
Hello, hello. We are going to get right into it. What is strength and what does that mean for most people? Does being muscular mean being strong?
I mean, it doesn't not mean that, but it does not the same.
Right. How strong does the average person need to be? Like, and how do they actually compare where they're at? Like, it's probably not safe for everyone to go just test their 1 rep max back squat. So how do you know if you're strong enough? What does that mean for the average person who wants to be very functional in their day-to-day life?
Well, they have to figure out what is strength. I mean, it's the ability to create force.
And force is what in lifestyle, in every day for the average parent? What is that?
You need to be stronger than the forces you experience in your everyday life. So, I mean, if you trip and fall, you need to be stronger than it takes to stand back up. You should probably be strong enough that lifting the groceries and the big bag of dog food is not something you need to warm up for. So it should be like a relatively low percentage of your strength to get something from the ground to your waist or from the ground to your shoulder. Like that's why you would train strength. I mean, on top of that, people experience a lot of pain when they're not strong because they use musculature, they use patterns that are not literally not stronger than gravity or not stronger than the object that they're trying to do. The other thing is just, people living a life that doesn't make them stronger on a long enough time horizon. People get hurt, and you get hurt living a regular life because you're not stronger than the stuff you're asking your body to do. The number of people who get hurt shoveling because how often do you twist and sort of lift, I don't know, like 10 to 40 pounds dozens of times? You probably only do it 3 times a year.
I think most people have experience with that. Like at some point or another, you do something stupid and you're like, why did I go shovel for 5 hours straight? Like my back is killing me for 3 days after. Like we've all overdone it. And I think that the whole point is really to make it harder to overdo it.
Yeah.
You should be able to have a level of preparation that makes it so those things don't end that way. How do people assess where they're at?
I think like anything, you want to know what the goal is. Like, are you trying to be strong enough to go to the grocery store? Or are you trying to be strong enough to like win your exercise class?
I think that a lot of people want something in between, right? Like most people, I think most people in my audience for the very least. So let's kind of stick there.
So like there's different levels, and right in the middle, we want people to be able to do all of the basic patterns with their own body weight. So you should be able to do a push-up on the ground. You should be able to do sit-ups, lunges, squats. You should be able to do a pull-up. Like that's a really good start. If you can move your own body, especially without much of a warm-up, then you're probably going to be fine. And it sounds, it sounds demeaning, but it's hard. Like a lot of people don't have a pull-up. A lot of
people come into assessment and they're like, yeah, like I can do a push-up, I can do a pull-up, like, yeah, and I can jump rope. And how often do you see people be like, I cannot believe that I cannot do these things? Because when was the last time you fucking tried it? 25 years ago? It doesn't make any sense that you would still have those skills. And I think we see that all the time, and it sucks. That's a shitty moment when you realize those things. Yes, it can be demeaning if you think of those things as not challenging, but they are challenging. Like they are hard. If they're hard for you, they are therefore hard. Like it's just a baseline level, and that should be motivating because it's not this unbelievable level that you need to obtain. It's very simple, but if you don't have those things, it's very serious. And I think, would you agree with most of that?
It's also why we call the levels that we have what we call them. Like their baseline inexperience, then proficient. Like, not being proficient isn't a problem. It just means you haven't really practiced it yet. Like, it's not, unless there's some underlying condition, it just means you literally aren't doing it with enough frequency, or you haven't done it in a structured way before, that you're not like, it's not a matter of, you're not weak. You're not never going to do a pull-up. You've probably just not spent hundreds of hours trying to do pull-ups.
We expect to be good at these things that we never ever practice. And that's the thing too. Just because you also haven't practiced something in a while doesn't mean that getting it back is like impossible. I think it kind of goes both ways. People think not only that, oh, well, I should be able to do it, but then when they can't, they're like, I must be so far away from it. And most of the time, learning something the second time around or adapting to something the second time around, it goes a lot more smoothly.
You're just biologically different. Like,
right.
You have so much more mitochondrial density. You're different, like your tissue is actually different.
Explain muscle memory and that concept.
Yeah, muscle memory is real. So your training doesn't go away. It's not a wasted effort. Yes, relative strength is a thing. If you gain a bunch of weight, you're going to have a harder time doing body weight things if you didn't train as you gain the weight, but it's relative. Like, you still have the strength level that you earned, or in our experience, you maintain 85, 90% of the strength that you have worked towards with any sort of maintenance. Like, people can work out 5 times a week for 10 years and then go down to once or twice a week and maintain, again, like 85% of the strength they've always had with us on a relative scale, like no effort.
Kind of going back just a little bit. How does somebody get stronger, and how do they progress if they find they do not have that baseline level? Talking about those basics again, getting a lunge, a push-up from the ground. I love negatives. I've talked about them before on the show. I learned that from Rob, so I'd love for you to expand on that.
Yeah, negatives is a good start. I mean, having a set range of motion so that all the reps are the same, because you get stronger through the range that you train, is a huge deal. Like, people squat to a chair, or you squat to the couch. You can do push-ups off the wall. Being able to get through a full range of motion repeatedly with roughly the same form. And the other thing is, if you're purely going for strength, like if you're somebody who's adamant that they don't want to gain a lot of size, your best bet is to do sets of 2 to 5, or maybe even like 3 to 8 is pushing it. But it's hard enough in that rep range that, yes, you're probably getting mostly a strength benefit. And another good way to know if it's actually hard is if you can do it again in like 10 seconds, it wasn't that hard. The strength being a nervous system adaptation or protocol, you should be like, you need a minute. And then after 2 or 3 minutes, you'll be like, oh wait, like I can do this again.
That's something that people miss too, I think. It's like, feeling hard isn't the whole thing, but if you know you're doing it correctly and you're whipping through, and you could do 50 unbroken if I asked you without a rest, like, it's not hard enough to make you stronger. And making it hard enough and safe enough is the balance you kind of have to do. And that balancing act is what creates the change. You can't fuck it up bad enough that you get hurt, aka you're back in pain because of weakness.
I mean, you're right. A lot of the mistakes that people make when they're strength training is they do singles, and that should be reserved for people who are really experienced. Like, to get enough of a strength stimulus by only doing one at a time, it has to be really heavy. And if it's truly really heavy, the chances that your technique are excellent every time and it's actually heavy is pretty low. Like, it's really more of a advanced concept. I mean, back on that, basically ever doing singles if you're not going to be in a competition, like, it's not probably worth it. It's not enough work for most people, and you're probably not doing it the same way you would do a hard set of 2 or 3. And if you miss one, you get like, you didn't finish any work. The other thing is, template programs will say all the time, like, add 5 pounds a week. And that's just not true. Like, a far more accurate number would be add 1 to 3%. And where they're getting 5 pounds is because most of the people who are going to go on Reddit and do a squat program are sort of strong. So 5 pounds falls in that 1 to 3% on most of their movements. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't at all apply to my mom, right? Like if she were to add 5 pounds to pretty much anything.
So you want to get stronger at home, get to the baseline of these movements. How do you know you're getting stronger and how do you know you're doing the right things?
Yeah. If you're training at home and you're doing body weight stuff, it's how many sets are you doing? Right? If you're doing 10 sets of 5 and when you started, you were doing 3 sets of 5 and you didn't just make them all look worse. Like if they all look exactly the same and it's all the same range of motion, then yeah, you're stronger. Like you have a higher work capacity, yes, but also, I mean, a lot of step loading protocols or strength protocols that aren't based on adding weight, which are good for body weight. You would just do more sets.
Yeah, it really can be that simple, which is nice. Make sure your form is good. Like film yourself. If you have no other kind of feedback or professional resources, film yourself and just look at it and look at a movement demo on YouTube that seems to have a lot of views and not a million negative comments. Like try to compare the two and don't just write yourself off and be like, well, obviously it's not going to look like them. Like it should roughly look like them, but it should just be you.
I have people do film first and last because usually, you're fresh and you're tired. And if they look crazy different, then something bad happened. And if you're brave, you can just post technique reviews onto the internet.
I'm not going to recommend that to my audience because I give a shit about my audience's mental well-being. Oh my God, some internet comments, dude. Like I remember the guy that told me I needed to lose at least 50 pounds. That guy will stick with me for the rest of my life. If you're listening to this, fuck you in your entire existence. I love that. Just do more sets. They should feel hard. And basically give me a list of 5 to 8 to 10 movements, whatever it is, that are the basics that they should aim for, like the real examples. So lunge, push up, what else?
I mean, it build, but the end,
baseline.
Yeah, the end goal for that target of be strong enough to take any random exercise class is at least 1 pull-up. It's being able to do lunges, right? We do 8, like you have to be able to do 4 lunges on each side in a row. And in that lunge, your knee gently touches the ground. You have to be able to do sit-ups, like probably dozens in a row. Like literally take that at surface value. Like if you can do 24 good sit-ups in a row, probably fine. After that, you talk about like doing things with weight. A few really common standards, like being able to deadlift your own body weight on the bar. Again, these are not things you're going to do day one, but it's a goal to have at least being able to bench or at least being able to deadlift your body weight. Squat, something similar, probably more like 75% added to the bar. And then bench press is a minimum half, like for most people.
Half your body weight.
Yeah.
Pounds, got it.
And added. I'd say like all these are minimums. You could probably go up to about double all those things that I said, but those are again like a starting point. And once you have that, going from that like minimum viable to like pretty good happens really quickly. I mean, most people do it inside of 6 months if you are really dedicated, and probably closer to 2 years, even if by accident.
I know. And that's the nice thing is I sound like a broken record, but I don't care because it's so true. If you just listen to that and what you took out of it is like, I'm never going to build to that and deadlift in a gym and I don't have the stuff at home. That's not the point. Like there is a lot you can do that prepares you in the same, like it's not those movements. Don't take them too to heart. I know that barbell movements can kind of freak people out. And it's not a day one thing. It's the option and it's the building of it's
and the principle, right? Like if you're stronger than your own weight, what are the odds that your own weight is randomly going to hurt you?
Exactly. Like life shouldn't hurt. Really, like it really, like life should not hurt all the time. And it's very normalized. And what I always say is just because it's normal doesn't mean it's normal. Like it's not, because everyone kind of treats their body like shit. Like that doesn't mean it's like the best thing. Like that's not what it is.
The bar's on the floor.
The bar is on the fucking floor. What percentage of Americans don't work out once a week?
It's like 2/3 of Americans don't have any sort of membership because that's the easiest thing to track.
Okay, well, so say that some people are working out at home. The point is, if you worked out one picking time this week, you're absolutely at the front of the pack. Like, that's insane.
We also have the Thanksgiving test. Like, go to Thanksgiving or whenever your biggest gathering is and be like, what percentage of these people worked out every week since last time? It's low.
It's low. It's really low. It's fucking crazy to think about. Let's kind of go into they're in the process. What are the mistakes that you see, I guess, the most often? I mean, you've seen literally twice the amount of clients I've had. You have like 5 years on me in the industry. So you've seen this so many times, taking people from below a baseline to above a baseline. What are the biggest mistakes people make in that chunk of time?
Yeah, I mean, you said a big one is assuming that you can do body weight exercises. This is a big one. Like you might not be able to, and that's fine. It doesn't matter where you are. It just matters where you want to go. And if you're trying to get to that baseline, don't assume that you can do push-ups. Like most people can't. And again, it's about consistency. 2 times a week, 3 times a week, especially body weight, you might be able to get away with 3 times on most of these things. Just give them a day in between and you should be there. It won't take very long. I mean, how many people have done their first pull-up with us and how many people were like, I've been exercising for 10 years. Like, I'm not a person who does a pull-up. And it's like, well, if you do pull-ups 2 or 3 times a week, you'll probably have one inside of 6 months. And like their jaw
And we've
drops.
proven it over and over and over. We've gotten so many first pull-ups at the gym that we're literally going to put stickers on people. Like the I voted stickers, but I did my first pull-up because we're cranking them out. And it's not hard. It's not hard to give someone a few things that are going to push them in that direction very, very quickly. And it's like
do pull-ups?
Like do pull-ups and do like any sort of vertical pulling,
or
anything.
Be in an environment where you watch someone else do their first pull-up.
Right. These things are so important. So let's take the pull-up example. A lot of people want their first pull-up and a lot of people, like, it haunts them. Like you said, like they'd be like, I've been exercising 10 years. I'll never get a pull-up. I'm different. Like, why are they not a special snowflake? And what is the bare minimum that they have to do in order to consider themselves a special snowflake and be like, I am different? If you haven't done X, blank.
Yeah, if you haven't worked on pull-ups twice a week for 24 weeks, then you probably aren't very good at pull-ups.
Cool. What qualifies? What quantity?
Quantity of efforts.
So like you said, 2 to 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, working on pull-ups.
Yeah, at least 10 minutes probably. And like most of that is resting. But I mean.
And see, I hope that like some of you felt like it was going to be a lot more. This is what I'm saying. It's not a massive ask. It's just doing the right things. That's what I was trying to articulate.
Yeah, it's consistency and it's a full range of motion and it's appropriate loading. Like for the pull-up is probably the hardest one because how are you going to appropriately load a pull-up if you don't have one?
So something I love for home workouts is the band like attached to something overhead and seated, like pulling down from either standing or seated, depending on how high it is. But basically, if you have a band attached to something overhead, something sturdy that isn't going to come crashing down on you, please do not attach this to some bullshit in your house. When you can, put it against a swing set, like something of that nature. And you can pull downwards and kind of pull your elbows from a straight locked out position overhead to down and bending and finishing by your sides. That mimicking of a pull-up movement is enough to get you started. What are some other things they can do at home that are super simple and or super low cost, like a pull-up band on Amazon? It's like $8.
Yeah, I mean, even what you said is really important. It doesn't even matter what you do. It just has to be more than you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're not used to pulling your elbow down to your side from an extended position with any resistance, it will get stronger. Like I've had people put books in pillowcases and do bicep curls. Or like you don't need to buy anything. You just need to teach your elbow and your shoulder to pull. Like you can do the same bicep curl thing with books and do rows. Like, can you pull stuff towards you? Just get a 90-pound lab. Like it isn't great on a leash.
Right. So something to kind of tie it back together. Each rep has to be hard. You shouldn't be able to pull down said band example for 400 times in a row and never feel fatigued.
Shouldn't even be more than like 15.
Exactly. So it has to actually be challenging each rep. That ties back to strength, not size. If you were going to do 400 in a row and by that 400th one, you were pretty freaking done, you're going to be so jacked. It's going to be phenomenal. Like, great. If you want to get stronger, which is what you need to do to get closer to a pull-up or a more strength-based movement of any kind that we've been talking about, that's going to look very different. Each rep should be challenging. Like Rob said, you need rest in between to recover. It's nothing that's going to be 20, 30, 50 reps in a row. What are the wrap-up points from, I don't even know where I'm starting, I haven't done this stuff in years, and I just want to get to the baselines you've talked about? What are the 3 biggest takeaways for people from this episode?
Consistency.
Consistency in what?
doing the same movement or pattern at least a couple times a week.
Love it.
And then progression, not only are you doing it, but you're making it slightly harder on a macro scale. So week over week or month over month, it's slightly harder. And 1 to 3% per week harder is probably enough. Well, it's definitely enough. And it's probably all that most people are going to adapt to anyway. So doing more than that usually just, I don't know.
Creates a form deficit.
Yeah. Well, it's like going on the highway the first time you drive. Like, what's the best case scenario?
You make it.
Yeah. Like, you make it until the next time you're on the highway. Like, no, you're better off like actually ramping into it. No pun intended. But progression, consistency, and then if I had to say 3, it would be setting your bar higher. Like a lot of people set their goal too low. I don't know how many people have been like, I want to do a pull up, and they do 1 pull up, and then they basically stop working on them, and they're like, oh, it's so hard for me to do that pull up now. And I'm like, well, yeah. Because you put 6 weeks of savings in the bank and then you went on vacation, like it's gone. Like you stopped working on it. And that was basically your 1 rep max. And then you lost that 10 to 15% I talked about earlier from just not training it. And all of a sudden you really can't get one every day.
Like you have to keep up with this stuff. But when we're talking about this, it's again, what he just said, macro scale. So you are going to gain strength slower. Then you're going to gain cardio endurance type things in your fitness levels, but you're going to lose strength slower. You will lose cardio faster, but it does still go away. Like you do have to, but the amount that you need to put into it, like work out once a week, you'll maintain 90%. If you're doing it in any meaningful way, it's enough. There's no excuse to kind of regress though. Like don't just stop working on these things. All right. Any final notes?
I mean, no, but if you wanted the super bonus nerdy part of strength, we could talk about that for 2 minutes.
Yeah, we're going to cut into the nerds cut. So if you want to stick around, nerd out with us, definitely do so. If not, go check out my Patreon. You can be one of the first people in it. I'm literally just posting everything. So go get in it while it's less expensive. Buy the less expensive option. I don't need to say it again. Back to it. Nerds cut.
Yeah. Why is strength need such low frequencies? Because it's a central nervous system adaptation. Like why does it stick around? Is because it's essentially a software update for you.
So give us how that looks in training, how you recover, and how it feels.
Yeah. So in training, it's you spend most of the session resting. And then when you're doing efforts, it's about like pushing really hard and creating lots of neural drive. And where do you feel tension while you're doing it? And like actually trying to move faster or like moving more weight with the same form. Like you're literally creating more force. And the reason that sticks around and the reason why it doesn't, I mean, there's several, but strength is the result of the ability to create more force. And it's the force going over a certain cross-sectional area. So that's why big people are strong. They have more area to contract, but it's also why people don't get really weak is because you don't tend to randomly lose tons of muscle mass and not train, right? Like, so if your habit stays the same, you're going to stay roughly the same size and strength, even without doing lots of extra work. Like you don't lose software or hardware just by, kind of touching it.
Right.
And it's different than cardio, like you said. You lose cardio in days. Like think about how expensive it is for your body to be good at dealing with what hard cardio is. Like being able to deal with heat and being able to deal with all the byproducts from every system.
I know, high respiration, high heart rate.
Yeah, like hydrogen just filling a certain muscle. Like you have to dump that all the time. Like that's an expensive adaptation to hang on to. If you go from like in season to watching TV for 12 weeks, like it's not going to hang on to that. And versus, like having tissue that you still use to walk around.
So what does that look like in terms of recovery? Why is it different central nervous system wise?
Oh yeah. I mean, you'll hear Olympic weightlifters talk about training 2 or 3 times a day, right? Because their entire sport is force production, or like track and field athletes at the highest level training, because you train hard 3 or 4 hours after you wake up. Then you train hard 9 or 10 hours after you wake up, after you've had food and like take a nap. because the muscles are not that taxed, and the cardio, like you said, is not that taxed. It's very different. Like, it's quite literally more stressful to run up and down the stairs of your apartment for your cardio than it is to do 2 big box jumps.
So people will start strength training, and it's this common thing I get is they'll come in for their next session or whatever and like, yo, I felt like shit after. And it's like, yes, like if you're feeling like garbage after every single like you're overdoing it, like that shouldn't be an all the time thing. But it feels very different than recovering from like a bodybuilding type program.
It can take days or weeks.
Right. So it's a lot harder on your body. And when you feel that sort of like really dense brain fog or like that super down regulation or that hyper fatigue, like that is your body telling you something. And the stress bucket I talk about all the time, strength training fills a lot more of it than
irritable.
Like you're just going to be pissy all the fucking time. It's such a different feeling that I think if like somebody told me about it, I think I would have expected better. It feels like you have a really, really light version of mono if you overdo it several weeks in a row strength training.
Yeah, but why do you think?
You shouldn't feel that way.
Why do you think eating a bag of Sour Patch Kids and drinking a Monster during a strength session makes you feel like a superhero? You're just dulling that fatigue.
Right. And that is not how I personally recommend getting through your day if it's not your prime objective to compete. Not everything has to be like 400% if you're just like a dude who goes to the gym. If you don't have insane goals and you just want these baseline things we're talking about, you probably shouldn't be like breaking yourself.
Well, this is health for fitness, so that makes sense. If it was fitness for fitness.
That's exactly what I'm fucking saying. Like, it's insane. It's like when people come to me and they're like, I want to do a bikini competition prep, but I don't want to do a competition. I just want to feel the pressure. I'm like, that's a fucking insane thing to do. Like,
feel the pressure.
I'm so serious. Like, you have no idea. That's probably, that's happened probably 15 to 20 times.
I want to hate food. I want to hate me.
Well, and like, that's the thing. Like the thing with bodybuilders, and this is not really my original opinion. A lot of people have said this and agreed with this, but like to my core, I believe that if you are the best at bodybuilding, aka you have your pro card and like you're competing to be the best or serious cash prizes, super, super cool to be dialed into that extent, because what it takes to get to that level is absolutely insane as far as dedication. However, most people in bodybuilding do not qualify as the top 1% of bodybuilders, and therefore are just basically giving themselves eating disorders for specified amounts of times, binging out of fucking control in the off season, and their body image is so fucking warped. By the end of it, it's not even close to worth. Like, you never even want to show what the fuck are we doing here? Like the steroid use, like you're destroying your fertility forever. This is health for fitness at the end of the day. What the fuck? Like, don't do that shit. This is not what we do here.
Yeah, but what is the goal? Is the goal to look crazy for 4 hours?
Well, the goal is to get there and try to maintain it, which is obviously to us sounds insane.
Yeah, but
but it sucks, because how would they ever know that? Of course it's not a thing, but how would they ever know that they only see the highlight reel of the Instagram, right? Like,
well, Instagram is real, so
Instagram is so real. Everything you see on there. So I want to plug Rob's Twitter. I'm not going to, because it's so many letters. What I'm going to do is I'm going to link it below in the show notes. So you can just literally click. It'll be right at the top. His Twitter's hilarious. A lot of good gold nuggets and tips in there. So make sure to give him a follow. Get on Patreon. I will see you in the next one. I do not advertise on the show except for my own shit. So please leave a review if you get anything out of these. I would really, really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one, guys.